The issue of chemicals in the environment is a story about science, politics, and humanity's relationship with the planet. My name is Chris Hughes, independent scientist, and this is the Chemical Journeys podcast. Join me as we uncover the story of chemicals in the environment through conversations with individuals working in this space. So, let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Chemical Journeys podcast. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Blanca Serrano Ramón, who is the Secretary General of ECETOC. Blanca, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Blanca, I think the first thing we should probably address on this podcast is, what is ECETOC? What does ECETOC do, and what's the overall mission? Please talk us through it.
That's a very good question. So ECETOC is a scientific organization. The acronym stands for European Centre for Ecotoxicology and Toxicology of Chemicals. But to put it in a simple sentence, what we do is we connect scientists from industry, academia, and regulatory bodies to work towards advancing regulatory chemical safety assessment. We do have a team of scientific experts that decides which are the main or current topics that we need to work on. And then we find the experts worldwide and invite them to work together on this topic.
Yeah, there's a real sort of emphasis on collaboration in that process, right? As you mentioned, it's scientists from all different affiliations, and the organization goes back quite a long way, right?
Right. It started in 1978, actually. So
Wow.
going closer now to the 50th anniversary in 3 years.
Oh, wow. That is a long time. And so I understand that we bring these people together, but how does ECETOC turn that human brain power into progress, into solutions? What's the kind of organization and structures and processes that ECETOC uses for that?
As I said, we invite the experts to work together. What we offer is basically the logistics. We organize the meetings, we provide a secretariat that can help writing the reports or articles, because it's important to note that we do not do research per se. What we do is produce roadmaps or frameworks or scientific articles, providing the starting stones for the work later on that regulators might carry out. So, as I said, what we provide is the logistic support and scientific knowledge to make sure that these projects come out with scientific and robust solutions.
Yes, and you have a number of different ways to approach this as well, right? So we
do have short projects that we call task forces, and then we have longer projects that are called transformational programs or programs, and then we also do workshop. That's mainly when it's not clear what we need to do. Let's say when topics that are very complicated or very new or too broad, then a workshop is the best way to go, because you can put together the brains, let's say, of the right people and ask them questions. And then by the end of the workshop, you do have like a working plan that you can follow afterwards. And then the other thing we do is we support other organizations with their own projects. So we do the project follow-up, selection of project researchers, and so on. So those are our main activities. But we're always happy to hear someone that has new ideas or new things we could do. So we're open.
Yeah, and when you say about coordinating projects as well, you have a bit of a link to CEFIC LRI in that, right? So CEFIC LRI provides funding to address research topics, and then ECETOC sort of guides it through.
So we get the information of what projects they have in mind, and then we do the support on drafting RFPs, selecting the researchers with a selection team that we create ad hoc per project, and then we follow up with the research team where things are progressing or not, and if things need to be redirected. So yeah, that we do for self-ethical learning.
Yeah, and ECETOC, it obviously has this really long history, and if you go on the website, I think there's so many different reports, across so many topics. So if you could just summarize in a few words, because I do think ECETOC kind of sits within a unique niche. What is that unique niche that ECETOC is sitting within? What need is ECETOC delivering?
I can tell you what I think our main advantage of, as you call it, the niche that we're covering is, again, this cooperation, the safe space. Now that safe spaces are in trend with the NAMS discussion, a safe space with scientists from different affiliations can work in an atmosphere where they know they're going to be heard. The discussion is going to be kept in the science arena. It's not moving to policy. That's very important for us. And we give them the option to discuss with scientists that maybe are not in their normal network, or that it's more difficult to contact in another organization because they have the constraints of being competitors or stakeholders. So we overcome that hurdle by creating this safe space where they can meet and discuss.
Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? That having an opportunity to mix with people, different backgrounds, different companies, different affiliations, in order to cross-pollinate ideas, right? And have your own ideas tested, because that is one of the key sort of tenets of science, right?
Yeah, indeed. I come from my previous job in a trade organization. I come from that background, and we always, in that type of organizations, you have the issue, same with regulators and with academia, to be talking to your peers, let's say, that have a similar way of seeing the issues. And you're missing the perspectives from others. You can call it pieces of the puzzle, but I always think it's the points of view, like in physics, when they tell you, well, it depends on the point of view what you're perceiving, but the event is the same. So in this case, for me, it's exactly that. We have different perspective, and if you don't figure or understand the others as well, what you produce might not be useful, or might not be implementable, or might be too complicated. I remember someone told us once that one of our project was too fluffy, meaning too complicated. It was so scientific that it was not possible to implement. So that's what we need to avoid. Is, okay, it is scientific, but is it implementable? Is it practical? And is it addressing the needs that the regulators or the civil society is asking for?
The focus is really on solutions, and a solution is only a solution if it is good enough and implementable, right? Because we're very good as scientists at dreaming up things that could solve a problem but are not practical. And I think, as you say, you need to have that dialogue in order to test those things. I think we really have a tendency to slip into kind of group mindsets and group think, and we get very comfortable in those situations. And that's certainly something that I noticed around COVID, when everybody went home-based and there were no conferences. There was a much bigger degree of separation and polarization amongst people. And obviously with social media and all the algorithms that kind of underpin social media, I think that is putting extra fuel into those forces. And so we have to work even harder to make sure that we keep talking to each other. Do you have any thoughts on, because obviously we're all kind of pushing, well, we have moved to a more virtual world. There's a tendency to encourage people to do more things remotely so they don't travel and things like that. But, any thoughts around the value of these face-to-face interactions that ECETOC's sort of promoting?
Oh my God. It is a pity that we are doing things remotely. It's true that it facilitates in a way. I remember before COVID traveling maybe too much. But face-to-face interactions are really, really useful. The best ideas, they happen in the coffee break.
Yeah.
The best discussions, the best comments, it's usually when you're in this relaxed situation after meeting, where you're networking, talking on a poster, something like that. And you miss that with the virtual interaction. If we could only do face-to-face workshops, for example, we will. But it's impossible with the travel restrictions that everybody is facing now. Corporate travel restrictions, academia have limited budgets for traveling as well. So we do hybrid for everything, but it is a pity.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. Well, it's definitely not the same, but I think we're done trying to sell it as being the same or equivalent. On the industry side, that's something that I've noticed is that the industry generally is struggling a bit at the moment, and one of the things that has led to is difficulties with people to travel to meetings. So, perhaps overall that's not a good thing.
It is not. I mean, we still can work. Let's be honest. It's true that COVID and afterwards has shown that we can do things online, and it's not that bad, but it's not ideal. I know some organizations have started now, like ECETOC, for example. I think the last edition was only face to face. The two previous ones were hybrid, but it complicates things so much for the organization. Trust me, the team knows it and prefer to do only face to face. And as I said before, you miss the informal interaction that actually has more value than I think we give it to.
Yeah, I suppose that's it. You guys will be very experienced in organising these meetings and trying to accommodate the virtual participants. And I know that in the recent workshop that was held on the OECD 309 test guideline in January, there were about 40 people in the room, but there were around 80 more online. And a lot of discussion, a lot of chatter, and useful information was also provided by the participants online.
Indeed. It is, as I said, there's some added value, but it would be, I would prefer to have fully hybrid and fully face-to-face events for various reasons, but I'm not gonna be, let's say now, crying around the corners because we cannot do that. Hybrid works as well. We don't want to miss the participation of those that cannot travel but want to be there. We will continue doing that.
Yes. I imagine it's a nightmare for you to try to accommodate all the wants from people for this sort of thing, Blanca. I don't envy you at all. But maybe we can move our conversation on to a bit more about you. So you've mentioned that you worked at Cefic before you came into ECETOC, which was a few years ago that you joined ECETOC, right? And would you like to tell us a bit more about your background? I mean, what's your story and what was your journey to get to where you are today?
Well, my story. That's an ominous. No, I'm a chemist by background. From the I studied in my hometown in the University of Zaragoza, and I finished my degree in Germany. Then I decided that I wanted to continue studying abroad. So I moved to the Netherlands to do a PhD on nanotechnology. Nothing to do with what I'm doing now or what I did afterwards. I think that was an important lesson from my PhD, is that you can study or do your work in whatever field, but then you can change and move to other fields, and it's possible. I think when I was younger, for me, the only route was the academic route. Then, while doing my PhD, I decided maybe it was not my route. Maybe it was not my path. So I knew I wanted to continue doing something related to science. And I started applying to different things. I only knew I didn't want to continue in academia, but I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. And one of the places I applied to was FAKE, the Spanish Federation of the Chemical Industry. And I went to do an interview, and I told them, I have no clue what product stewardship is or what a regulation is, but I'll be happy to learn. Then I started there with REACH. It was just, I think it was 2009. REACH was just starting to be implemented 2010, the first registration deadline. So it was a lot of reading and understanding. My first day I Googled what a regulation and a directive were. and then I moved on to CEFIC here in Brussels, which was, I really enjoyed it too, the trade association world and how policy making works, how a trade organization works, the OECD, the UN, GHS, and so on. I found it really interesting. And then 3 years ago, I got the opportunity to work here in ECETOC to become the Secretary General. And that meant going back to, let's say, more the science side of things. And I wanted to take the chance and do it. And here I am, 3 years later.
Feels like 3 hours.
It feels really that it has gone by very fast.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine it's a little bit less reactive than working at CEFIC.
There are different challenges, and you have different arenas, let's say, where you interact. But bear in mind, I talk about putting together different perspectives. It has its own challenges as well. So indeed, it comes from a different angle.
Yes. Yeah, so I guess at some point you probably have to say, right, you've had enough time to speak now. Time to make some decisions.
Yeah, indeed, it's difficult sometimes to cut the discussions or to stop a group because everybody wants. I mean, you are a scientist. You work with scientists a lot, and I would say we always want to continue and move it further and see what's next. But we have limited resources and too many topics. Right now, we have 25 task forces in transformational programs together.
Wow.
Moving. So we do need to close some topics in order to open new ones. So, yeah.
I imagine also being in that sort of trade association role that taught you to be a bit decisive, to get things over the line when they needed to.
I think that it's also my personality somehow. If I'm in a group of friends, dinner or whatever, I usually would select what everybody's going to eat if we're sharing. I'm not waiting for people to tell me what they want. Some people like it, some people don't. But yes, I would say.
Yeah. Cut through the noise. What's the outcome? Yeah. No, that is useful because I know that some people will pontificate forever if you allow them to. Is there anything in the last 3 years that you're especially proud of that you've done while you've been at ECETOC?
Yes, but it might not be what you think. I'm really proud of the team we have, how the people here in ECETOC interact with each other, how helpful everybody is and capable. Even people that are completely new to this are so fast to pick up the activities and be proactive. So that's one thing I'm really proud of. I guess I should also talk about the activities per se. I think I'm really proud when we take something, an activity that might be already ongoing somewhere, but it's a little bit stuck. And I think that shows that ECETOC has the right structure to unstuck certain topics that might be difficult to move forward in other places. And we can take it and remove the obstacles and move ahead.
That's definitely a great thing to be able to facilitate in the role that you have and that ECETOC has. Is there a specific example
Yeah, I'm really proud of the work we're doing on polymers in the different areas, both in the polymer analytics, that it
Yeah.
was, the project was already started, um, but it was not broad enough in the amount of stakeholders involved, and we remediate that by making it more international mainly. And the plastic additives as well, a topic that we had already been discussed in ICCA.
Mm.
It was believed that we were more suitable to carry it out, and then it moved here. Yeah, but it's difficult to choose among the task forces because everybody's doing such a great job and dedicating the time. Because I didn't mention it, but people that accept to work with us in most cases do work without being remunerated. It's only when we look for an expert for scientific writing or things like that that we do have a contract with these experts. But the industry, academics, and regulators that work with us usually do it without being remunerated, which shows that they believe in the added value of the work we do.
Yes, definitely. And I can speak from experience, having worked in some of these task forces. I think people find it a great opportunity for them to expand their horizons and to do something new and different compared to their everyday role. And I think people also really value the opportunity to work with people that they wouldn't normally work with. There's a task force ongoing now looking at the OECD 309 test guideline, and the representatives there from academia and the Environment Agency, as well as industry, and lots of really great scientists, all kind of focused on adding value to this specific area. So that's been really nice to be a part of that as well. And I can also say that, just acknowledging what you said about the team, I've definitely noticed over the last few years how the atmosphere at ECETOC has changed, and people are very happy to come to work and collaborative. The more junior people that you've brought in are also doing fantastically well. You know, I'll highlight Megan in this because I've worked with Megan quite a bit, because it is it's quite an intimidating environment to come into, right, as well, especially if you don't know much about the subject area, and then you've got to be amongst all these people, all these scientists who've been working on these problems for years, some of them for decades. I think that I made my own kind of assessment that you probably need to be working in this area for 10 years before you feel really comfortable, and then you can kind of start to stand on a foundation of knowledge to venture into other challenges and problems. Credit to the team, and also to you for giving them the confidence to be able to work in that environment, and you know, obviously feeling comfortable to learn and to develop themselves.
Thanks a lot. I have to say, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but I hear here and there, like, oh, the younger generation, oh, the young people, they are not so motivated, they want and they don't give, and so on. And in my experience, that has not been the case at all. Like the younger generation, everybody that has started with us here has been so good, so motivated, so ready to jump on whatever project there is, even boring ones, like categorizing all of our publications that our new trainee Andrea has been doing. So I cannot agree with that. I think the new generation is full of really highly motivated people.
Yeah, and I think it's about creating an environment that also makes them feel valued. And yeah, I think this one in particular, like I said, it could be pretty intimidating. You know, a lot of the time people are kind of judging people based on what they know and their credentials. I can remember when I first started out in my career, it was quite
Yeah.
intimidating. So I think the fact that you're seeing that reflected back at you is also, I think, a product of the environment that you've created and
Oh,
the
thank
atmosphere
you.
that you've created. Yeah, you mentioned the polymers. I mean, that for me is, I think that it has to be a highlight for what ECETOC's done,
Mm-hmm.
because the amount of work that's already been done towards developing the concepts around risk assessment of polymers for both human health and the environment is quite remarkable, because there wasn't much there before. This is something that is now very much in focus because of the REACH revision and wanting to bring polymers into scope for registration under REACH. I don't think anybody fully appreciated the amount of work that aspiration would create in terms of how we actually feed polymers into the REACH regulatory machinery, because you've got to, first of all, identify them, characterize them. You've got to look at their bioavailability. You've got to look at how they transform in the environment. You have structural polymers, solid polymers, and then you also have hydrophilic polymers and gels, and the estimate of 200,000 different polymers on the market, because this, unlike small molecules, this is more like playing with Lego.
Legos. Yes.
in building things.
Yeah.
So, oh, it has a bit of that property. Let's build that into it to give it a new property. So, yeah, it is a huge new frontier, and also really relevant because, as I said, the REACH revision is coming, and it sounds like polymer registration, some form of new requirements around polymers is going to be there, right? So, yeah, I could go on forever about polymers, I think. All the different endpoints you have to think about, all the different tests. How would this work for a polymer?
Put a foot inside the topic. You don't need 10 years to realize it is really complicated. And everybody that is working on this from any side, I don't care, I think they're aware. This is not going to be easy. And if it's fast, it's not going to be good. We will see how this happens. We know that it's coming. We don't know exactly in which shape or form, but it doesn't matter. We know there are gaps that we need to cover. And I guess we realize that the first one we need to understand is, what do we have exactly? And that's why the polymer analytics come first. Well, we have already worked on polymers before on the grouping and risk assessment. ECETOC has 4 reports. But then the question was, like, can we have a strategy that can be simple but accurate enough to help you understand what you have and where your polymer should go in a group? So that's what we're working on now. And then we will continue. There were some questions of, should we wait until we have a clear idea of what's coming or not? But to be honest, every time we wait, we are late. So we should be working, and then when whatever comes, be notification, be registration, we would have already some basis to work with.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart stance to have. It's because it seems to happen time and time again that by the time something becomes a big scientific question or regulatory challenge, the industry is on the back foot. Quite often, I think there's a focus on the immediate. There's a lot of focus on what is happening now in terms of regulatory compliance and things like that. Resources are constrained. I hear about reorganizations within industry and groups
everywhere
being restructured. If a group was once a collection of scientists that had some freedom and some formal structure that enabled them to collaborate, and that was sort of the focus, then you see them kind of broken off and assigned to different business units and sort of atomized in a way. So yeah, I don't feel that the forces that are at work really promote this kind of proactive foresight, unfortunately.
Well, let's deviate the discussion a little bit, I would say, because what you're saying, it's making me think, as I said, we no one has the full picture of things. And I think we should have a little bit of the concept in general. When I started in trade organizations, we had no clue about product stewardship. I think it would be very useful for any scientist, any student, to have at least an idea of what we're talking about. I see it very often how people that are new to the regulatory science area are often surprised and a bit confused at what's going on. And wait, what? Like, am I supposed to give you the idea of what we can do to regulate this chemical? And I think that's if people were more aware of what happens in regulatory science, and they would be way more interested. I think it's something everybody should be aware of or have a subject like we have in chemistry, we have organic, inorganic, analytic, physics. Why not regulatory science? I think it would be better for everyone because you need academia to understand, as we said at the beginning, that some tests might be beautiful and it's validated, it's great, but it's too complicated. So it would not be implementable for regulatory science. And industry, I think sometimes they are too set in their ways as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said, you're talking to your peers, so you're like, there's no issue with this. So why is there concern? You need to show that there is no issue. You cannot just say, trust me. And regulators, again, no one has the knowledge of everything. So sometimes they need to get the knowledge very fast, which is not easy. Find the right people to move forward policy. So again, it's a matter of putting everyone together and
Yes.
and moving it. But also, again, I'm gonna say it so many times, but I think regulatory science is not given enough attention in university, and it would be so helpful.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And the more I've been kind of having these discussions and sort of exploring this topic more holistically, the more I've thought about the sort of practicalities of everything and the implications of everything as well. And the more I think about it, the more I'm moving away from thinking that we can do this from a pure science point of view, because a lot of what we're doing now is about thinking about the future society that we want to build and also reacting to the new sort of knowledge that's coming through, for example, as analytical techniques improve and we start to be able to measure ever lower levels of sensitivity of chemicals in the environment. For instance, we have issues like PFAS and microplastic pollution, which are switching on global policy discussions about chemicals. It almost seems to me that there's a need for everyone to sit down and say, okay, this is where we are. This is the knowledge that we have. Is everybody aware of where we are and the knowledge that we have? And then, okay, what do we want to do now? The way it's going at the moment is that you have messages coming in the media and also the incentives within academia to hype up issues, scare the public. But then you also have industry that is on the back foot and is in some way sort of defensive because of the challenges that they face from critics on the other side, let's say. But anyway, maybe that is a good point for us to move on to. You recently had a symposium on risk perception and trust in science. Maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
I found it really interesting. Every year we have a symposium on a topic that we are not discussing, so it should be something outside of our usual things. This year was trust in science and risk perception. We see there is this resistance to trust what is produced. In my opinion, this polarization of if you're a scientist from industry or that has a project with some company, you're biased, you're not scientific. And I think that's such a big mistake. And it's a pity because these are scientists that are dedicated to these topics. And as in everything, there might be difference of opinions and interpretations, but science is science. And I find it sad to see this reactivity in some conferences. We've seen it in ECETOC in the past. some articles have been written about scientists that cooperate with industry or not. And we've been talking about this for 40 minutes, but you need all the sides. So we wanted to understand better what was the issue, what are we or they doing wrong to not convey the message that this is science and the evidence for you to read and agree or disagree. And if you disagree, come to us and we can discuss it and maybe come up with a different opinion at the end, or a different point of view, or a different conclusion. But to reject it only because it comes from XYZ, I find that's a mistake. So anyway, long story short, we had 3 speakers. We had Andrew Turley from ChemWatch, and we had Andrea Bert from ETH Zurich, and now she has her own company. And we had Dave Hemingway from Tactics. And I found it really interesting to see that sometimes it doesn't matter how right or how much evidence you have. If someone doesn't want to believe, they won't. Emotions are important and they are not always weighed by arguments or science, and that it takes 30 seconds to scare someone and then you need 5 minutes to address all those concerns that were pointed out in 30 seconds. So you might always be on the losing side. And well, among many other topics, it was a whole day symposium, but I find it really interesting to know. My conclusion is we will keep doing what we're doing and work in the best way we know and can, moving science forward. And we can improve maybe in communicating more. We tend to overcomplicate the way we put things. Some of our task forces or workshops don't have the most straightforward names. Like there was one example given. It was a workshop to address exposure of low molecular weight components in polymer matrices, which if you say plastic additives, you might not be precise, but people understand it better. So we do need to look at ourselves and improve, because we tend to be very precise. And by that, we end up being only understandable to a very few amount of people.
Yes, that highlights perfectly as well what I was saying before. Another element of this is the human condition. In the end, we're highly evolved chimps. We have all the machinery in our brains of something from 100,000 years ago, and whether we like it or not, that doesn't always make us perfectly rational. We have emotional responses to things, and we have biases and blind spots. Every scientist, because we place our rationality as the highest ideal, we need to be more mindful of that particular blind spot, as well as communicating our message to the wider audience and making sure that it's understood scientifically. There's also the communicating with the public and adapting the message to communicate with the public. So I did actually get a question sent in from one of the listeners, not specifically for this conversation, but they were asking if one of my guests had any thoughts on recommendations or resources for or methods for communicating science to the general public. The general public sometimes is skeptical. Is there anything from this that you could offer there?
Well, I think a good exercise is to explain it to someone in your family that is not in the field.
Yeah.
If they don't get it, no one is going to get it. We tend to be too much in the topics. So even when we think we are simplifying it, we are not. So yeah.
It's like simplify it and then simplify it again.
I have the same issues. I try to improve how we communicate our outcomes and to make it clearer. But again, you need some external perspective to tell you. And yeah.
No, thank you for that. And that was a question from Mike. So, Mike, if you're listening, I did eventually ask your question. I'm sorry it took so long. Yeah, I also, I mean, going back to the point around the noise that was made around conflicts of interest, I have been reflecting on that more recently because I remember when it was raised a couple of years ago and the reaction, also my own reaction to that was kind of, at the time, it was quite a shocking kind of thing to read and to digest because it forced people to. Well, first of all, I was thinking about colleagues who I work with, who I really respect, and I thought, well, this is clearly going to be quite hurtful, especially where things were more kind of targeted at individuals than necessarily at the mass as a whole. But then it also, I think the human reaction is to get angry and defensive. Like I said earlier about industry perhaps being a bit defensive when it's being attacked. I hope that in time, as the pain has receded, it also did sort of force some self-reflection and for people to look in the mirror. And maybe it has moved behaviour slightly. I think there is more of a lean towards transparency now and being really kind of, where before you might have said, I have no conflicts of interest, kind of doing a double take and saying, oh, maybe there is that, that bit of funding or that role that I had at one point, to make people reflect. And it's difficult because it's like people in glass houses, right? And everybody has their own incentives and things, which we all need to acknowledge. We should all be mindful of, be humble in acknowledging those. But also, I think it has also aired the room a little bit, and in a strange way, perhaps has allowed people to talk a bit more together. Maybe that's just my impression.
I think it has created the need to address the issue because it seemed there was resentment because these articles are, as you said, they address individuals, and you're like, why would you target specific people that are so good and scientifically driven and so on? But anyway, it showed that there was something to be addressed. Everybody has biases. It doesn't matter which side you are of the table. It's not only professional biases for where you are employed, but it's also personal biases for your own values, your own opinions, your own beliefs. And it is not the same for different people. But in general, I would say everybody wants to live a better world for the next generation, and everybody's working towards improving the safety assessment of chemicals, at least in ECETOC. That's our goal. That's what I mean. So I think dialogue is necessary. We need to reach even further, and I think it's important to talk to those that disagree with you, even more so than to those that agree with you, because you get better insights and a more, I think, more complete solution if you include everybody. And by the way, we would also be happy to have scientists from organizations that are not industry, academia, or regulators, scientific NGOs, or whoever. We are also open for that.
Yes, I noticed when I was looking on the website ahead of this conversation, you have a new associate membership thing, right?
Yes. So we always had the associate membership, but it wasn't clear what it was. We work with our board, and let's say the associate membership is for individuals or organizations that do not qualify to be full members. Full members are the paying members that are industry that manufactures or uses chemicals. So in this case, it's usually industry and CROs can be full members. But anybody, scientific organizations, individuals that have scientific background, regulatory bodies, why not? Even in scientific NGOs or other scientific organizations can become associate members. Those don't have to pay, and they can participate in all our task forces transformational programs and get more information about what we're doing, where they can join, and so on. So it's just a matter of reaching out and saying that you're interested. And we of course ask for a little bit of background CV to see if you're suited for the task forces you want to be included in or not, because as you know, we want individuals that contribute. But that being said, I don't want to exclude young scientists. I would like also to have a couple of places in each task force for young scientists that have recently finished their degree and would like to join. And I think fresh minds and fresh ideas are also important.
Yeah, so anybody who's listening who has a scientific background and would like to join us as an associate member, you can go to the website and look at how you can apply. I would highly recommend, if you have the opportunity, to join one of these task forces, because you have really great opportunities to collaborate with brilliant scientists and provide a contribution towards some really important challenges. That there are still many challenges to solve with chemicals for both human health and the environment as we continue to move forward to develop a safe and sustainable society. So Blanca, just before we wrap up, what's the outlook look like? Where do you see things going, and how is ECETOC going to contribute?
So where are things going? Continuing our work on many different topics, including these, probably starting something on the mixture assessment factor, biodiversity. You mentioned safe and sustainable by design, new approach methodologies, non-animal methodologies as well, polymers, persistency, mobility. There's quite a lot to do. So board is not something we're going to be in the future. We are, in particular at ECETOC, we're now working to change our website and improve it and make it easier to navigate and find our materials. And hopefully we can reach out to more people like this and be more informed. And I think that's it from my side.
No, well, that's really awesome. And yeah, I just want to thank you for all the work you're doing at the helm in ECETOC. It's, the group is making really great strides, and as you said, you're building a great team that's helping to make sure that the science moves forward and that we're productive and focused in addressing some of the big challenges that new science and new regulation is bringing up all the time. So with that, I just want to say thanks very much, Blanca, and thanks to everyone who's been listening. Your time's really precious, and so I'm really grateful that you've spent it with us. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please tell your friends and colleagues about the Chemical Journeys podcast, and we'll have more conversations like this coming up in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you, Blanca.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was really interesting. Thank you, Chris.